The 2021 basketball card market was no joke. There was a real collapse. Many cards dropped in price. While that spelled some gloom and doom for 2021, that's actually a good thing for 2022. I want to talk to you about some buying strategies that I'm incorporating that I think might help you in what you want to do for 2022 and beyond. Details on this episode of DIY Sports Cards. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of DIY Sports Cards, a production of Iconic Trading Cards. This is a place where we take a deep dive into the buying and selling of sports cards for collectors and investors alike. I'm Ramon. What up? Did someone say something about good news? Yes, there might be some good news coming out of what you see in the sports card market that ended in 2021. As you recall, by the end of the year, we saw PSA 10 graded base cards that were lower in cost than that same card in a raw form back earlier in the year. Not good news for those who were in the business of buying raw cards, getting them graded, and selling them at a grade 10. What's the good news that comes out of this? How can you benefit from a market that may have hit rock bottom, or at least it's very, very close? Today I want to share with you strategies that I found that you might find beneficial in how you approach the cards that you buy in 2022. Let's jump into the data and see what we can do with the card market going forward. Okay, the first strategy we're looking at is one that's pretty obvious, and that's the active grades. Active grades are an interesting play for 2022, simply because historically they've been bucking the trend of what the pandemic has done to the market. When things are going down, these players continue to go up. In other words, their card prices are based on performance. Let's take a look at some examples I'm talking about. All right, the first one I want to share with you is Connor McDavid. This is his Young Guns base card in a PSA 9. Now, you look at this trend. I took the data all the way to the start of when Sports Cards Investors started with this tracking. So this goes back to late 2019. And what you see here is a real upward trend of Connor McDavid. Basically saying, hey, where's this pandemic peak? There was none with Connor McDavid. During this time frame, he won a Hart Trophy for League MVP, continues to produce at a high level, is in contention year after year for the MVP. And once the Edmonton Oilers figure out how to put a team around him that can win a Stanley Cup, his legacy is just going to climb. Another one is Steph Curry. Just broke the three-point record. Prices suggest this legacy is already established with 2 championships. I believe he has an MVP. And holding the record of the three-pointers. Now, what's left for him to do? I think what's going to bake into his prices going forward are more championships, more MVPs, and continuing establishing his legacy as the greatest shooter of all time. So Steph Curry is another one I'd look at. Another example of this is LeBron. LeBron is about 100 games away from breaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record as the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. That's a record that's been sitting for a couple of decades now. So LeBron, being that close away, it's going to cement his legacy as the greatest scorer of all time. Here, his PSA 9 base rookie card is actually down to about $600 to $700. Really, really low. I mean, the last time prices were this low, you have to go way before to the start of the pandemic to see prices at that similar price point. So this might be a good buying opportunity for those of you interested in investing in the legends. This is one that you might want to consider. Okay, so the next strategy you want to look at are parallels. Parallels are just refractors, short prints, super short prints, SSPs. What's interesting about these cards is they follow the same trend as the base cards. An example of this is Luka Doncic. Now, what you're seeing here is a graph of his Prism base card in a PSA 9. This one has a pop count of several billion. Now, you see the trend since the start of 2021. You see it's just been down, 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 down. People say it's because of a high pop count. It's an overflooding of graded cards for Luka Doncic in the Prism base. So a lot of reasons baked in suggest why prices are going down. Now, if you take those excuses or explanations as the reason for going down, then why, oh why, are we seeing the exact same trend line for his Prism Silver? In fact, if you were to compare the two, you'll see that his Prism Silver has a much steeper decline than his PSA 9 Prism base card. This tells me that the impact from last year really took a toll on refractor cards more so than base cards, and maybe one that might be worth considering to invest in going into 2022. Here you can get a Prism Silver in a PSA 9 at $810 for a silver compared to $192 for a base. So really looking at $200 to $300 for a Prism Silver and a PSA 9, that's actually not a bad price considering that you're still getting a Luka Doncic and he's still going to be a great player. Now the next strategy is vintage. Vintage cards, I know people say it's not exciting to buy vintage. I personally have a sweet spot for vintage. I'm a big fan of the history behind all sports. These players have their own legacy, and you're really buying into the legacy. And the more they get celebrated, the more prices are going to continue to go up. I want to show you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. The first one I want to show you is Jackie Robinson. Now here, Jackie Robinson, not many sales historically, but here's his 1956 Topps base card in a PSA 5. It looks like this. Now here's another example of a card that has really bucked the trend of the pandemic and how cards were tracking going into 2021. When most cards were dropping considerably, Jackie Robinson's prices were going up. Vintage always defies how the market goes, up and down. The bad is it doesn't climb as quickly as when cards are doing well, but the good is it's not going to crash as significantly as when the card markets drop, as what you're seeing right now. This one creates its own trend lines. Jackie Robinson is going to establish its own pricing. Hence you see this. I think Jackie Robinson is an example of a card you want to invest in. Another example, Mickey Mantle, the figure of baseball post-World War II era. Won a Triple Crown, won a couple MVPs, has several World Series championships with the New York Yankees in the 50s and 60s. Just a cornerstone of a very, very good team. You look at his price trends, you'll see that in 2020, when things were tanking, Mickey Mantle was going on the upward. People were really looking to vintage to really secure the value that they had. The next strategy I want to show you is cards graded by SG. Now, I've mentioned in a video before that this is a little bit of a hack in the industry. If you look at the way SGC grades, they grade very, very tightly. SGC grades fabulously. The only knock on them is that their brand is not as well known or well respected or well celebrated as PSA. Big influences out there still say buy PSA. PSA is the way to go, and hence when they're calling out PSA, prices are going to follow suit. SGC, they're the underdog. So when you see a grade 10 SGC, buy that in comparison to a PSA, because worse off, if SGC fails to deliver and catch up to PSA in terms of value, what you can do is crack that card out of the slab, send it off to PSA, land your 10, dial in value. To me, it feels like a good hack in some cases. Let me show you some examples. One example I want to show you is Patrick Mahomes. Now here we have his card in a PSA 9, looking all the way back to the start of when the data started being reported. As you can see, an upward trend. Again, a performance-driven card, so Patrick Mahomes technically could be considered an active great, although he's not the active greatest. That still goes to Tom Brady. But it's still an active great nonetheless. Now, in a PSA, you see this card. You see his prices dipping a little bit right now in the last 30, 45 days, $312 for a PSA 9. But it has been climbing as of late, and you're seeing it track over $400. Compare that to an SGC, which is the ones in pink. You'll see that SGC 9 cards are not only, this is interesting, not only lower in cost, but you're seeing a downward trend in their value. So when you're getting a $400 card with a PSA, you can get that same card in an SGC 9 for $300. This is an interesting drop-off in pricing because I would have thought the trends would have been going the other direction. But as such, this is what it is. You still see a discount when going to SGC. And if you're one that's looking to try to secure value without paying a premium, buying SGC graded cards is a great option to go. One last strategy I want to talk about, and I think this is probably the most important one, is buy what you know. In the last 18 months, a lot of card trends were suggesting, oh my god, base basketball cards are the way to go. I saw a lot of people buying into cards that historically they probably wouldn't have in the normal card market. Cards such as Tyler Hero, Jaren Jackson Jr., Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Donovan Mitchell. Cards of players who were showing to be very, very good, but not celebrated enough in this hobby for the value to start rising. In fact, these cards suffered the fate of a significant price drop in 2021. So that's a clear example of FOMO buying, fear of missing out. But the real success factor for you to buy cards is to buy what you know. Go for your favorite players. If you have someone that others are not buying, that might not necessarily be a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. If you truly do like Luka Doncic and you want to buy his base cards, go for it. Because you're probably going to know that card and the value of that card better than the majority of the other collectors and investors that are out there. For me, as you can tell, I'm a big fan of Mickey Mantle, Patrick Mahomes, George Brett, Jim Brown, but I've been following these cards for years, knowing exactly where the trends are going, knowing if a grade 5 is X price, I know the premium that you get when you go to a grade 6 and up and up. That's how well you want to know these cards. So if you like a player and you follow their cards, chances are you probably know a lot of their card values, and that's the area you want to really put your money in. Because if you know it, you know what the upward mobility is going to be, and you know what the downward trends are going to be. So highly recommend you trust your judgment. Go with what you know. You know what you want to buy. You know where your money's going to go. Don't chase. Don't chase, because chances are you have probably already missed out on the opportunity. Hate to say this, when other influencers go online and start giving their top 5 cards to buy for the week, or the hottest cards for the week, it's already gone. The value's already gone. Chances are they're probably going to be on the downward trend. Very rarely do you get to capture an opportunity where they report out a hot card and it continues to go up. I don't think that's a good strategy. And if you're in this for a reason. It's for what you want to do. That said, you always reserve the right to get smarter. Have a good week, everyone. Stay safe. Be healthy. I hope you find this content interesting. If you do, I'd love for it if you subscribed and hit that like button, because the more subscribers I get, the more opportunity I have to create content. I really want to jazz this up a little bit. Love to have some giveaways going forward, but we really need the subscribers to make that happen. My intent is to share knowledge and share information with you, and hopefully help you make better decisions going forward. Hope you have a good week. We'll talk soon. Peace out.